This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwall podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 385 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Busko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund's 5-2 win against Eintracht Frankfurt on match day 1 of the Bundesliga, and we will preview tomorrow's Supercup match against FC Bayern. For that and more joins me the pundit of Sport 1 TV on Hungary and obviously the writer of the Bundesliga Bulletin. I'm very glad to introduce you, Abel Mesheros. Welcome to the show, yet again. It's good to have you back. How are you doing?
Thanks. It's good to be back, Stefan. You guys missed being on the Yellowwallpod, and it's a good start of the Bundesliga, and probably even a great start of the Bundesliga season if you're a Dortmund fan. And happy to be back and talk about it, the Frankfurt match, and preview the Supercup with you.
Yeah, it was a good, interesting game. The 1-1 against Gladbach, could argue in either way that one or the other team should have won this. I think Jan Sommer had some excellent saves, and on the other hand, Gladbach maybe should have had one or two penalties, but courtesy of VAR, that did not happen. Mainz had a 1-1 against Leipzig, and of course Dortmund starting out of the gates in the Topspiel quite well as well. Minus maybe that pass luck on goal and that set piece goal. But let's talk about it. Obviously, it was the 7th time Borussia Dortmund did win their opening match in a row. Last season, I think match day 2 then was where the cold shower occurred with the 2-0 defeat away to Augsburg. Obviously, before Dortmund do travel to Freiburg to maybe do better than last season in match day 2. There's the Super Cup. But Abel, it was a very interesting game. New coach, obviously totally different lineup. We had the absence of Meunier as a right back. Lukas Piszczek is also out. So we had Felix Passlack starting as a right back. We had Axel Witsel starting as a center back. And then Manuel Akanji as the only healthy real center back right now, next to Nico Schulz. And then obviously we had this midfield diamond for a while. And up top we had Haaland again. So what did you make of this first setup, which I think was a little bit tailored to what Frankfurt fielded?
Yeah, Lukas Piszczek is very out. He's retired out, but he's out and gone. But I thought it was interesting. I was thinking about what Dortmund would play, because they played the diamond in most of the preseason matches, but I think knowing what Marco Rosa and his staff do, they're very flexible, and I think flexibility was the key for this match, and it definitely looked like a 4-3-3 with a ton of variations where during various points of the match it was a diamond with Royce sometimes dropping back between Haaland and Hazard. It was also sometimes like a 4-1-2-3. But basically, I think the basic idea was to stretch Frankfurt with Hazard, who always kept the width on the right side.
Yeah, I was gonna just say this is probably the key tactical ploy of this game, that Dortmund accounted for Kostic with Hazard.
Yeah, I mean, it's not super deep thing that if you ever seen Frankfurt, you know that Kostic doesn't.
No, but still, I think we should talk about it.
On a good day, he's not he's not an ambitious defender. It was a pretty bad day. I rewatched it just before the podcast, and about 20 minutes in, I have 6 different scenes where he just doesn't try, or so the basic what Frankfurt tried to do, right, in terms of their pressing, which under Gaz, and I think maybe a little bit different than what used to be under Adi Hütter, but they play this really, really narrow 5-2-1-2 or 5-2-2-1, depending on who presses. But what the problem with that is that the way Dortmund played is keeping Hazard always pinning back Kostic, or sometimes dragging out Ndika when Kostic would go up to press. And Frankfurt would usually press with the ball side wing back. So like Da Costa, if it's on the left side, Kostic if it's on the right side, would always press. But the other one then would have to tuck in. Now, I think like Kostic did some of that, but he wasn't particularly alert. So you could always play the ball in behind him. And Dortmund did a good job of putting Reina or Bellingham into the half space and having Hazard keep the width. And then you always had Haaland, and Frankfurt was very clear about always double teaming Haaland, which, even still wasn't enough. So as a result, they couldn't really press much. And particularly where they couldn't press much is the wide areas. So what that meant is that Dortmund anytime could just get wide, particularly to Paslak's side, and he was really, really good at progressing the ball. I mean, even the game began, right? Like with this 1-2 that he played, there was a couple of times where he just like blasted by Kostic. A couple of times where he played good passes. So it's unfortunate. I think when you just casually watch the game, you think, okay, it was a pretty bad Paslak game. But I actually think he had like one other turnover and the own goal. But other than that, he did a lot of good stuff sort of attacking wise. And even in the first, 7-8 minutes when Dortmund had those chances, which had the one that Haaland just missed, like in general, I thought that the setup of Frankfurt just wasn't going to hold because they couldn't generate enough pressure, so to against build-up, and Dortmund always had extra ideas. Like the Royce's role is something we'll talk about, I'm sure, of how he was able to come back and be the extra guy. And then they were always pinned back, so basically 4 or 5, depending on situations, were back. And then they also did have the legs in midfield, like Hasebe was so overrun with So as well. And it's not like, Kamada and Barco are going to be like these pressing monsters. So I didn't think that was like necessarily a good plan. And you certainly saw in the second half when they switched to like a 4-1-4-1 that they had like a good spell and probably could have come back into the game and then they got blown out. But yeah, it was just also like a really dominant Dortmund performance in terms of the build-up part, which is a work in progress, but it gets them into transition, which is what you really want to do with this team. And you saw that what happens when you make a mistake like Ndika did, that you get Haaland and then he just runs at you and then it's game over, right? And then that's what happened. That you had the, I don't know, was it 7-minute spell, I think, early in the first half where basically, it was like the, I guess 11 minutes and then the own goal. So it was like 23rd to 34th minute when seemed like the game was over, and then Dortmund could have probably piled on more if it wasn't for the Kevin Trapp, like one of the all-time dumb goals that got called back and some other things. So it was a crazy first half.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the Paslak own goal was a little bit unfortunate, obviously. If we talk about the first goal that Dortmund scored, that Marco Reus did score, it was kind of funny that Ndika sort of had a play just similarly right before where he actually managed to dribble just through 2 players, and then the next time Dortmund players just closed the middle and he got stuck trying to do the same trick, and then I would say Frankfurt literally got overrun because when Haaland made the sprint to the inside of the field, who was it? Was it Hasebe? Yeah. Who just tried to I
think it was Hasebe, yeah.
Who tried to tackle him and just...
He looked every bit as old as he is.
Yeah. I mean, other players have tried that too, to tackle him from behind, like Kimmich, and then just, picked up an injury. So it's actually quite dangerous to do that, I wouldn't recommend. I also like the little run that Royce did to sort of guide Ilsan Kamor to the middle first and then go to the left again to receive the pass. And I think this is the most classic Marco Reus goal of all the goals he scores, when it's passed into the left side of the box and he just sort of crosses it over to the far post with his left foot. So yeah, that was fun.
I almost felt like, Haaland is obviously and rightfully getting all of the plaudits for, I think it ended up being 2 assists in the
I would still count the third for Reina,
2 goals,
to be honest.
but I think one of them, but and obviously like the carrying in transition and the setting up of players, which is not something that I think we really saw from his game. So that's a nice addition. But I think at the same time, like we should talk more about Royce as like the guy under Rosa, who's huge, like a different player, and it's like kind of reminds me of like a super version of Thomas Müller in the sense that like he's everywhere. He's always like the extra man in midfield. He's during transition, and he makes all of these like the pass that he made for, I think it was the second goal, I want to say,
to
where
Haaland.
like just how quickly he makes. Yeah, he made this like. It was like I think Bellingham was running on it, but there's just this vertical ball that he played. That was just insane because just the recognition that he has there, so that because I think like Dortmund always have this get out of jail free card with Kobel playing the ball up to Haaland now, but just that ability for like, and then Haaland actually what I thought was where he was even more impressive is just these aerial duels, because like that's not something that he's super great at, right? Like but he just seemed to have like
He's getting
extra
better.
desire, or yeah, he is, and that's scary. Like it's scary that like he's adding because like that physically he's gonna outmuscle you in space, right? But
I
now
think
he's
he
also
actually
doing
was
it
fouled
when
a
it's
lot
just, like,
too, and those weren't given.
yeah.
But back to
Yeah, he's
Royce.
getting
Actually,
angry,
one
actually.
question. Thinking of watching Royce these days in the form he is in. Do you think this is the best version of Marco Reus we've ever seen? I mean, you have followed Dortmund for decades too, and it's obviously a very tough debate to have. But I just wonder, with all the experience he has and the intelligence he's making, obviously he's a bit of a different player now than he used to be. But I really like this version of Marco Reus, to be honest.
Yeah, I think there was like a couple of days ago, there was a video kind of celebrating his Bundesliga debut, I want to say, and then like it had all his goals, and I just kind of nostalgically played that hit
Terrible
play,
haircut.
and then but I think the just his resounding quality then was speed, and obviously the intelligence, movement were already there, but just, and then like he doesn't have that anymore in the sense that it's not it's not like blistering, or
he doesn't have the
like
stumble
Haaland-esque,
dribble
right?
anymore like he used to have.
Yeah, right. But where he's picked up is the intelligence. I mean, there's so many of these situations where like I think there's like the one in the 36th minute where he comes back and like receives the ball in the 6th spot and then moves back to center back, because that's when that's when that you can't follow them there, or like he shows up just beyond the Frankfurter pressing in like a 3-4-1-2, and then he shows up beyond the back three and the midfield four, because that Haaland is spinning the back threes with Hazard, so he's going to be an outlet there. Or he can show up wide when he sees that the play is coming to Nico Schulz, and he's going to get pressed by a wing back, and the wing back is not going to get there because it's a large distance, and he knows like Ilsanker is not going to come out there. So there's all these things, and these things are not like, I'm sure these are somewhat automatized in terms of training, but some of them I think are just like Royce recognizing space. And that's the part which is scary. And then I think there's also the layoff that he had for one of the goals, which was crazy, where was you that tweeted that this is Marco Reus's goal. I mean, just so many of these little things where
that was when Hazard
like,
scored the second one, where he had this layoff on the turn, where either I think Reina or Haaland could have gotten to it, and he just completely switched the angle on Frankfurt, and basically that unlocked the entire play. It was an insane goal anyway, with I think starting with Witzel in the box, or however I can't even really talk you through it because there was so many stations, but an amazing goal. I think the second goal that Dortmund scored was probably the best one of the day, even though it did get a little deflection, which is a bit of a minus point on the style.
Overall, what I thought was like really interesting, and what's been great about Rosa's Dortmund is that they're playing with so much more attacking risk. Like just even the rest defense, like there's a really good example from the 8th minute when like it's they have like a shot. I think it's from a chance, and then they kind of Frankfurt are trying to run this counter, and Akanji like breaks up the play with Witzel really the only guy at the center circle, at the edge of the center circle in the opposition half, and Akanji is like way out in front to tackle, I think.
Yeah, it was like a Hummels play almost.
Yeah, exactly. And it's this sort of forward defending, which you didn't see. But there's other times when Dortmund just really got back into their defensive block in transition. The organization was really good. And that that was the other thing. And then just with Royce, I also think the setup with this idea of Dahoud is pretty much the only guy who stays as the holding guy. And then you have Bellingham who can show up. Like Bellingham and Royce have a really good sort of positional flexibility in terms of, when Royce drops deep, it's kind of designed for Bellingham to make a deep run. And Reina makes a lot of these runs into the channel. So that's really, really hard to have, kind of like the younger legs, but also Royce is still dynamic. And then obviously each of those guys is still a very, very good one-on-one player. And when you have to worry about Haaland and when you have Hazard pinning the one side, it's a lot. Like that's like, it's basically your entire back five in midfield. And then you also have to commit some people to pressing. So it's really, really hard to deal with. And I mean, it's hard to evaluate how bad Frankfurt necessarily were.
I thought they had a decent game, especially in the second half when they brought on, what was it?
Yeah, they got better when they changed.
Lindstrom, sorry.
And Jens Peter Hauge. Yeah, I mean, like, to give a little context to their kind of season start, like they had this horrible start in the cup with, losing to Mark Schnatterer and Mannheim. And like, it wasn't that they lost to Mannheim, it was that they could have given up like 4, 5, 6 goals. And like, they had to basically bench Tuta, they had to bench Lentz, and like a couple other guys because of just how horrible it went. So it was like, I don't know, it was something that they were trying to do. And then obviously this thing didn't work in the first half. And then once they kind of switched to this like 4-2-3-1, and then eventually when they took out Hasebe for Hrustic, they had basically a 4-1-4-1, which was super offensive, and then they got broken open. But yeah, I mean,
but what do you make of this one quote by Marco Rose, who said that?
Oh, the change, yeah,
that Marco Reus came to me at one point and said, "Coach, let's play 4-2-3-1 because Frankfurt are playing differently with a 4-1-4-1." And I said, "Okay, if the captain senses that that on the pitch, then we'll do that." And I like that.
I mean, obviously, I like it. I think there's a tendency to maybe make too much of that, and like. I mean,
it probably happens all the time, but it's still nice for Rose to just, say that it happened.
Yeah. I think there's more the psychological aspect of supporting your player, like a little bit how like Nagelsmann is doing this with Stanisic now, like he's talking of Stanisic in the sense where, like it's not like Dortmund don't have a guy who is up in the video analysis sort of point high up, and he's giving all this information and he's telling them, and it's like not like they don't have Rene Maric who's on the sidelines. Like, I mean, this is a guy who founded a tactics blog, for God's sake. Like, I'm sure these guys know, they recognize, like, and especially if it's also because it's a halftime switch to, back four, and then they withdraw Hasebe for Hrustic. Like, you have to be, I mean, like, and I think there's a lot of credit to Royce, of course, and I don't want to take that away, but it's also like, it's not, it's not like it's mind-blowing.
No, but I still find it interesting,
it's also
the dynamic.
It's also, you should give him credit. Yeah. No, and it's good. You should give him the credit for sure. But, you know what I mean? Like, it's also, there's also other times when Dortmund played a 4-2-3-1, and when they would just, like they would just drop Bellingham deeper. And and like these formations are not set in stone, especially like knowing Rose and Rene Maric, it's much more about different versions and occupation of spaces and things like that, and it's much more about especially with Royce, like he can be such a difference maker, and he was such a difference maker. So, but yeah, it's definitely, I think in terms of the responsibility, it's a good thing, and maybe now with Sancho gone, this could be kind of the and if Royce can stay healthy, like this could be kind of the team that he can kind of lead, and especially if Hummels, like, okay, he's going to be back at some point, but I think Delaney's leaving, so like there is some sort of a leadership opportunity there for him to take, and especially like if it's Bellingham and and Reina and Alan, like all these kind of younger guys around him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think he's more and more growing into it. You know, I feel like at first when he was team captain, it felt a little strange, but by now it makes way more sense. You know, he's grown way more into the role over the last years. And I think the way this team is working right now, the way they're communicating and the flow, the lot of rotations you see, it's very positive for the start of the season, because I warned earlier, you know, it's almost a habit that Dortmund blow out opponents at the first game and then all the troubles start later. But I feel like we're seeing already a pretty solid foundation, and keep in mind that Dortmund did certainly not have the best players on the field. But that being said, I thought Nico Schulz had a really good game. Maybe he should have had an assist when he had opted for a pass to Hazard instead of shooting it himself. You already pointed out that pass was not, a nightmare, and had good progression moments. I think Bellingham and Dahoud both played extremely well. I really like the emotional energy that Bellingham also had with the fans. I think there was his first game with 25,000 people in the stands, and obviously Haaland feeding off of that as well. Was more energetic as well. I think I saw Adam Dorowski tweet earlier that in this game alone, Haaland had like 5 passes into the box, which is like I don't know if it's a record, but he had like all of 17 in the previous games. So if Haaland plays like this, it's going to be a real interesting fight between him and Lewandowski, I guess, who gets the Torjägerkanone.
Yeah.
And the other thing is obviously if he manages to play passes like that consistently as a playmaker, because you were talking about his hold-up play earlier, and if he manages to bring this all together, which obviously is really hard to do, and especially at this age, then that will unleash so many other players like Royce or Hazard, and obviously even Reina. So I'm really looking forward to the season now, based off the couple of games we've seen, and let's say the tactical adjustments that Rose did. I have to rewatch the game again because I didn't find the time yet, but I would say just from the first game I watched it, I think that Dortmund pressed a little bit more aggressively, and more importantly than back in the day, they also press collectively. That's certainly something I notice every time if Dortmund press, whether it's just, the first line or just Haaland going for it and the rest sort of too hesitant, or if it's a pressing where players find the right impulse and go immediately, whether there's any hesitation in pressing or not. And I think it's improved drastically already. I think in the little summer preparation Dortmund had, I think if Dortmund or Rose worked on that particular subject, I think we could see a little bit of success. Obviously, these are all professionals and they don't need that much work on it to do it, but still, I feel like doing a good pressing is still a lot about the mindset and how much confidence you have on the field. And from what I've seen, I've been impressed. I want to hear your take on it, though.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be really tough to disagree with that. Like I watched some of the preseason. I think the Bologna match was the one that I watched pretty closely, and that was a really impressive first half against a Bologna team that I think actually just went out of the cup now. But like it's a decent possession team, plays 4-3, whatever. And then the cup game against Wiesbaden, that was one of those where like I did the studio and it was like 7 minutes in, it could have been 2-3-0, and the Wiesbaden keeper was like having the game of his life, and then
as per usual.
And then Haaland, obviously, and then Haaland went kind of nuts. Like I just looked at the shot creating actions for Haaland, and he had 9 of those in this match against Frankfurt. And to put that into context, I think Neymar was leading the big 5 leagues with 8 per game. Sancho was at like 5.5. So just, like obviously it's one match and whatever, but that's really impressive. Pressing, like I wouldn't necessarily say like the pressing was the most impressive part of it, although I think it was
No, but I'm trying
impressive.
to look at what changed.
Also,
and I think...
Yeah. I mean, the intensity for sure has changed, and also they're playing higher, they're taking more risk. Again, it's also unlikely against Wiesbaden and Frankfurt, who, like Frankfurt, very deliberately didn't want to build out of the back. And it's, Glasner's teams don't do that anyway. They're doing a little bit of that last season, but they certainly didn't want any part of that. And they just like very quickly played long balls, and which is interesting when you have Rafael Santos Borré, who's like small guy, and Kamada and Barkok, like neither of those guys are, aerial winners, but I guess they tried that.
Yeah, I guess that's a subject for the Hey Eintracht Frankfurt podcast to discuss.
Yeah. What's impressive is like how this makeshift back line, when you had, all these injuries, and, like none of Hummels, Guerrero, and Chan have played, and, Meunier has the COVID thing, and then obviously missing Brandt as well, and then you have a new keeper who I think Kobel actually has been. We talked about that kind of off the air. Is like how his coming off the line and confidence and these kind of things, and he has a commanding presence, I think, and kind of, I think you guys were talking about this on one of the earlier shows, how he directs the defenders, and you could definitely see some of that, and probably a little bit unlucky certainly unlucky to concede the Passlack goal, but that's an improvement as well. I think Akanji, just even in this game, just like there was a couple times where he can, like with Frankfurt only pressing with one forward, your job as a center back is then you have space, you need to attack that space, and he did a really good job of carrying the ball. And making some. He also made some really good diagonal passes to Azar as well, and while not really neglecting any of his defensive responsibilities and putting in the tackles and doing all the things that he needs to do. I thought it was, given the injuries and the age for Witsel, coming back from that to put in this performance was pretty cool. And although I don't think he's going to play in the Supercup, but that's a nice one. I mean, and then, I agree with you with Schultz. Like, he had that really amazing line-breaking pass against Wiesbaden, and even in this game, probably a little unlucky not to get more. And then we talked about Passlack, who, as I mentioned, like his ball progression and even like some of the defensive stuff, like he looked okay. Like he had 4 tackles, which not something you associate with him. And yeah, I think given that, and to have it's Wiesbaden and Frankfurt who are kind of in trouble, but it's been pretty confident wins. So I think certainly like you could have come out of this with much worse. So yeah, overall, like, you have to be ecstatic.
I mean, yeah, there were a couple moments where the game could have tilted in the other direction. Mm-hmm. Maybe when Frankfurt got a little bit more on the front foot. I mean, the first chance just right out of the gate in the second half, where Kobel makes a really good save.
Yeah, Santos Borré. Yeah, Santos Borré had like 2 or 3 of those.
There were a couple of close calls where Dortmund's defense was not 100% tidy. So, don't get too euphoric about any title race just yet. But I think for that, it was really good. And, we've chatted during the game. I'm very impressed with Kobel, especially him coming off the line and not hugging sort of his own goal. With Bürki, it always felt like a bit he had glue on his boots and just couldn't get forward. And in this case, there were a couple of situations where he came off his line and prevented a Frankfurt counterattack, and then there was this one somewhat undercooked back pass by Passlack, which could have ended quite horribly, but Kobel was there. And this is exactly what I want from a Dortmund keeper. I think this is the way Dortmund play. This is exactly what you need. So I am super happy to see this sort of style from a goalkeeper right away. For me, that makes me more happy than insane goaler and saves or whatnot, because we knew Bürki was already really good in that department, and we all know that Kobel does that. But it's more about the judgment he makes, and it was an error-free performance, and this is what I'm looking forward to. So obviously, with this risk, every now and then he will be caught out, but it's probably rare, and the way he plays, really helps Dortmund in the build-up and makes them all around a more balanced and better team. And I think having only seen one game, and obviously in the long term, but I think the money on him was worth it, and Dortmund will benefit massively from it.
No, I agree. Like I watched probably like almost all of the Stuttgart matches, and I've been kind of keeping tabs on Kobel as well, like as a keeper who was at Hoffenheim and then Augsburg, and he was a guy like I think should have gotten a chance kind of sooner, but like his shot stopping numbers were never really all that crazy. But then he would have all these like eye-popping games against like Leipzig, and he had kind of the rising to the occasion thing, and obviously but it wasn't like it's not like he had like spectacular numbers in terms of post shot XG and these kind of things. Like he was, it wasn't like he wasn't among the top keepers at all. But like what I think we should point out is that it's like Jan Sommer is a good example. Like he was at like -7 goals last season, and then I think a lot of these metrics, and as you know, I'm pretty big believer in metrics. Goalkeepers is like the hardest position to evaluate because you just don't have sample size in terms of shots you face. And then there's also so many things, like it's very dependent on the style. So like to be a goalkeeper for Dortmund is a little bit different than for Stuttgart because they play with a back three and the goalkeeper isn't used as much. And whereas with Dortmund, if you play with, a back four and then basically two people in the center back, you might have to be more involved and distribution has to be better, or you're certainly higher off the line. Like I think just in terms of like the being off the line and those kind of things, like that's a completely different type of animal when it comes to playing for Dortmund and playing for Stuttgart. So like Kobel in this statistic, you have the sort of average distance that you have the defensive actions. So at Stuttgart, this was like 13 yards from his goal, and in Dortmund, it's 19 yards. So he's like a good 5-6 yards higher on average, because that's what's required of him. And he's very good at those things. So on a team like Dortmund, that's going to be more valuable.
Yeah.
Because so you want him, but like, if he's playing for these kind of teams which don't ask that from the keeper. So that's what I mean, is that you can't just kind of transport some of those things. It has to be on time, and maybe that's something Dortmund saw, and that's why it makes sense. Or the same thing as you said about leadership or command of the box. I mean, there's several ways to evaluate goalkeepers. I think there's much more of this stuff, and I myself am not really much of an expert on it, although I've been kind of getting into a little bit with some of the other projects I do, and I mean we did a podcast with goalkeeper coach who is at the New York Red Bulls, and that's what he said. This is still such an underexplored, undercoached area of the game, and there's so many things where some teams will have. I mean, how many teams have like the typical goalkeeper coach who is like the ex-keeper who just kind of needs a job? Like I still think there's still a lot of those kind of around, and like, do they really get the best training? It's hard to say, but then you also have teams who are really serious about it, and then you also have scouting, and then you also have these kind of things. So I think in that sense, the signs with Kobel are really, really positive.
Yeah, to surmise, he's a keeper. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I could endlessly talk about this game. Also, the fact that I think Dortmund did they finish the game with 4 strikers on the field? I think they brought on Moukoko, Tigges, and Malen, obviously.
Tigges. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
so obviously in the Favre era, that would have been absolutely unheard of. And there's one other thing I wanted to mention briefly, and it was only brief periods in the second half, but there were moments where Dortmund managed to take the speed out of the game and just have some good old dead possession. And when you have dead possession, then the good news usually is you sort of control the game, you control the tempo, but what you must not do is then give the ball away cheaply or sort of lull yourself to sleep and then get sucker punched. And Dortmund managed to avoid that. And I think having some mature possession, if you will, and as a whole team managing to sort of take a breather while not affording the other team any real opportunities is a skill that not that many teams have, because it takes some adjustment in game. And I think the way Dortmund facilitated that, especially on match day 1, where the automatism are maybe not as crisp as they were in the previous season, I think is impressive. And obviously it's also good to do against a team that's coached by Glasner. Don't get me wrong. But nevertheless, I just wanted to point it out real quick, because these are also things that impress me and make me sort of happier about Dortmund's outlook overall, because obviously when you have like a 2-goal lead or so, these are things you need to do in a long season, and seeing Dortmund do it adequately to me was nice.
No, yeah, I agree with that. Like I think that's impressive, and it also helps when you're 5-1 up. So it's like it's kind of really hard to get away the game from there.
Yeah, but they also, I think, already did it when they like were 3-1 up. But yeah, I don't know how much there was to say about the substitutes. Obviously, Thomas Elneny was caught napping when Hauge scored the set piece. That was his marker, where he just got left for dead. But also a classic goal for Dortmund to concede at the back post, basically one deflection, and then we've seen it multiple times, and especially against a team like Frankfurt, it can happen. And it's annoying, obviously, but I hope Dortmund do work on it and improve a little bit. And I think Marlon wasn't really that impressive once he came on. I feel like he just tried to dribble a little bit too much. Didn't quite find his feet yet. But, I think these things will take some time as well to get in there. I thought he looked very positive in the cup game after he came on. But
I think Rosa said something about that, where like he needs to kind of get into kind of sort of the shape or like just to be more. That makes sense. I mean, he joined them.
He was a little bit too close to his
transfer
teammates
was announced, but
it
was I think it was in the Bad Ricard's training camp or something when he joined them. But you can't really expect him to play there. Although it's interesting, like in the Supercup with Hazard likely out, that how that comes up. But I mean, it's almost like when you have I think Gio Reyna also had three goal contributions. Like you still it's like what do you need out of Marlon when everything else is kind of clicking? Right. So
I think this is maybe the most positive takeaway to knock it on the head here. The whole Frankfurt review, that the fact that Marlon wasn't really needed, to be honest, that he had some sort of garbage time to get acclimatized, and that's about it. So I think it was a 10 out of 10 performance from Haaland, a world-class performance, but more importantly, the team performance was on the level that it needed to be. And now we'll see tomorrow, or today, whenever you're listening to this, how the Super Cup against Bayern Munich will fare. Who were... I don't know. I thought they were quite unimpressive in the first half against Gladbach, but as this game progressed, they became better, but then also at the end didn't really have that many chances to be called the more dominant side or whatnot. I don't know how you see it, but I would like your take on Bayern's side against Gladbach, where they traditionally always struggle.
Yeah, it's kind of been their bogey team, of course, and I thought like I watched a lot of Gladbach in preseason and some of the games, and wasn't really impressed with them at all. And I'm a big fan of Adi Hitter, and they did a really nice job with particularly Joe Scally, who's kind of been the star.
I've never heard of this guy, and all of a sudden he plays lights out football on the left side.
Yeah. I mean, he went there from January from NYCFC, and
but he only played like
wait until he turns
or something.
Yeah, because they had to wait until he turns 18.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and but he's a guy who can play like right back and left back, and since Bensebaini's out, he's been playing a lot, and just the physicality of him, as like he held his own against Leroy Sané, which is no small thing. But what impressed me more about Gladbach is how just they had this pressing net, but basically kind of like a 4-3-3 or 4-3-2-1 shape, and pretty much like Stanisic was getting a lot of pressure, and like I didn't think Goretzka and Kimmich had a particularly good game, and we saw Upamecano struggle as well. And
usual.
then I think and then like so they were able to generate a lot of the chances, and then it's just like they're playing this kind of style clutch, right? Like just kind of hit it vertical to lay off, and then you have the chance when you get the turnover. And then Nagelsmann adjusted by basically like bringing in Stanisic as kind of an inverted fullback and putting Sané and Müller wide. So what that did is it kind of broke the press, because that meant that you had to bring other people inside, and you had to kind of defend the half space, and then you basically kind of allowed Bayern to progress. And that after that, once they got into the final third, although like their structure sometimes was just like three guys at the back, or two with Stanisic, and then three sort of in the middle, and then like five guys up front, and then wasn't always a lot of connectivity. And they also underhit some passes, things like that. But they also got out. We have Alphonso Davies, who, like everybody said, he wasn't going to play 90 minutes, and he just bombed up and down and broke the speed record, I think, until Haaland took it from him. But yeah, they started generating all these chances. I mean, Jan Sommer had 8 saves in the box, I think, after 65 minutes, and like 4 or 5 of them were just like ridiculous, and a couple of other ones where like he got hit, and like it also seemed like it's kind of by the time Bayern got their set piece goal, like they probably should have scored 2 or 3 in that one. So overall, and then like the game changed again when Thuram was brought in, and they basically kind of Bayern almost were lucky that, I mean, certainly were lucky not to give away. Like, I mean, they did give away 2 penalties that I'm still not sure like how, at least one of those with Thuram getting in front of Upamecano.
Which one do you think was more blatant, though, when he was pulled down in the box by Upamecano, or when he was right in front and then sort of brought down? Because
I think
the first one got reviewed, right, and there was a no call, but I usually
the second one didn't get reviewed. Yeah.
This I don't know. To me, that's a slam dunk penalty. I think Martin Rafeld is always arguing about when there's another player hitting you from the back, sort of. That's always a clear foul. And to me, it's the Sterling one, right? Like from the Euros, right? The Raheem Sterling one. Yeah, I agree as well. Like if you ever played football, like even at like the lowest level, like what you're always taught as an attacking player is to get your body in front and claim the space from the defender, because then he can only foul you from behind. And then basically, if you're a striker or attacking player, you're kind of taught that, okay, if you get contact, it's fine if you go down, right? Like, and I think that happened. Like, certainly those things happened. And Upamecano, I mean, I'm a big fan of Upamecano. I think that's pretty safe to say. But he's been known to give away, like, I think even his very first game, he gave away in his debut a penalty to Franco Di Santo, and he can give away the clumsy penalties and make those kind of mistakes. So I think to get away with that, and that was a really, like, again, I don't have a rooting interest in those games, but I thought Bayern were pretty lucky. And I think even like a lot of the Bayern fans were saying that they got lucky, that they don't understand how they got away with that one. But I think overall, just like based on the general course of the game, how like I looked at the running XG for the game and the chance creation, and like after the first 10-15 minutes when Gladbach had the chances, it was like maybe it was like 0.6, and then 0.5, 0.6, and then it was like that, basically flatlined until they brought in Thuram, and then they had the chances there. So I think overall, like, yeah, it's 2-2 or something like that. Maybe even Bayern edging it would have been more fair, but yeah, it's certainly the job seemed fine. Do you think we can expect to Bayern field the same team they played against Gladbach again on Tuesday?
Yeah, I mean, I think there hasn't really been any other updates in terms of their squad. The Tolisso, I think, is now back. Like I mean, he doesn't really have a place to stay, and like he's a guy that they've been trying to sell, and this COVID thing now. So I think Lucas Hernandez is still only training kind of individually, but like Tolisso is probably going to come back to be on the bench, and I think Stanisic is a guy who's going to start because Pavard is out and Bunassar is Bunassar, so they don't really like him, and I think Chris Richards is not someone they want to play as a fullback. And Stanisic has been somebody that Nagelsmann has been really hyping up, and I think it's much more of the social competence part of it, and Nagelsmann, although he has been decent in the preseason, but it's going to be, I think, the same 11. I think Sané, although he didn't have a good start, like eventually had a pretty strong game. I mean, obviously, you can't really drop any of the Kimmich, Müller, Goretzka, Lewandowski guys. So, yeah, I think Zula over Nianzou was kind of a thing that because Nianzou played all of preseason, and then like everybody thought that they're selling Zula, and then obviously Zula and Nagelsmann have a connection, but I guess even Nagelsmann just said that because he's an established Bundesliga player. So I kind of think that for that reason, like he's going to play in the Super Cup as well. Although depending on who takes the Super Cup seriously, but I think Bayern kind of have to now, right? After this thing and after the way Dortmund started out.
I mean, if you look at Bayern's form, if you include the preseason, they've lost to Cologne. I think that wasn't at the last game of the season or something. They drew against Ajax and they lost against Gladbach, and then obviously a 3-0 loss against Napoli, and now again a 1-1 draw against Gladbach. So obviously,
will they ever win again?
Yeah, exactly. But results wise, it hasn't been smooth sailing for Bayern as usually is. So if I'm looking forward to this game, I'm like, if I had to pick a scoreline prediction or something like that, I'd probably go for like a 4-3 win for Dortmund or something. I feel like it's going to be the sort of game where both teams will have their strengths in attack, but not necessarily in defense. I'm also intrigued whether Witzel really will start or not, because he just came back and a lot of players.
That seemed like it would be counterintuitive, right? Like to have a guy who had.
So maybe Papadopoulos will then play next to Akanji or so. But otherwise, I don't expect too many changes, except for, of course, Torgan Hazard, who Marco Rose said he had ankle issues already going into the Frankfurt match, and I think the spot got a little bit more swollen, so he'll be out. I don't know if it's going to be Marlon, but to me, that's the perfect game to let him off the leash and have him start this game. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting to see how he will behave, but. I'm hoping also that maybe Reus doesn't play for longer than like 60-70 minutes. I don't think.
Yeah, because maybe you can bring in like Delaney in midfield and then put like Reina as the winger if you're playing this kind of a 4-3-3 again, or I don't know. It could also be a diamond. I think ideally what you would want to do is to stretch Kimmich and Goretzka, because that was kind of the interesting part of it, and obviously I think as in a larger context, like none of these guys have had much of an off season right after the Euros, or they had an off season but they didn't have preseason, I guess, like or one or the other, right? Like so they they're not going to be in top shape, and I mean, even I think we saw Neuhaus had like cramps after 79 minutes, and you certainly saw Kimmich, and Kimmich had much more of his errant passes, and Goretzka had a lot of these kind of positional errors, which are kind of unusual. And I think, as you said about the high score line, like Davies, his defensive positioning is still the part of his game that needs to work on. Upamecano, obviously, shaky, and Zule has been shaky as well. And then you Dortmund with probably Papadopoulos and this back four. Like I think everything is set for and it would be fun to have like a 6-7 game or something like that. And I think it's an advertisement for the Bundesliga as well. Like it's actually not bad. So I mean, I don't think there's I think that'd be good. Now, that was probably going to be like, having said that, it's probably going to be like 0-0.
Yeah, I don't know, but I foresee a lot of goals in this game, to be honest. You know, if I were a gambling guy, I'd probably go for the 3.5 plus goals for the over. So yeah, I don't know. I don't see any of those teams being at their height of their abilities yet. Obviously, you just mentioned the lack of preseason. I think most of the Bayern players actually didn't have anything really. So
yeah, they had I think 10 days or so when they kind of, I think it was like they mentioned that somewhere where like Lewandowski and all those guys, like they had maybe 10 days, and which is, you know, we normally think about a preseason as usually 5-6 weeks. If you're a coach, you're trying to plan for that. I mean, obviously that's always unlikely now with all of these different things, but when you compare that to basically a week and a half, I mean, that's, you know, so yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Obviously, I still want Dortmund to win the Super Cup. You know, it could be a nice little boost for them. You know, it's not going to be devastating if they lose it, but nevertheless, it should make up for you know, it should make up a really nice setting, as you said. I think in terms of Bundesliga advertisement, this should be a good one. And obviously, Dortmund have Super Cup MVP Felix Passlack in their ranks, so well, let's see what kind of performance he brings out. I think he had this one legendary Super Cup performance against Ribéry.
Yeah, who I think came back for was it some sort of testimonial with Boateng, and they're like the rumors of Ribéry coming back. Like, can they just bring him back for the Super Cup? I feel like, I mean, why not? It'd just be like Ribéry Passlack round 2, right? Like, why not?
The good old times. Yeah, I think this one was already shot down by, was it Khan or someone? There's no chance of really coming back to Bayern, which I'm actually quite glad about, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess on second thought, you know, I mean, these Bayern fans would be excited, but yeah, like we probably have had enough of the Ribéry eye poking and this kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, is there anything else to preview, anything particular that people should look out for, how Dortmund line up against Bayern? I mean, the lineup itself should be pretty simple. It should be Kobel, Passlack, Witsel, Akanji, or Papadopoulos, Akanji. I mean, then you have Schulz. I guess Dahoud will play, Reina will play, Bellingham will play, I think Royce and Malen, and then Haaland up front will play. Do you think it's going to be a 4-3-3 or more of a diamond?
I think it's in some ways, like with not having Torgan Hazard, there might be a better chance of a diamond with Malen or Tigges, who are much more of a striker as opposed to like a wider player. Although like Malen is comfortable wide, I think probably don't want to have Tigges wide. But so I think maybe just because of that, it's likelier. And then just also against Bayern, who, you know, like to have the two midfielders and Kimmich, and then having Müller back, so you could potentially have an advantage there with a diamond. 4 against 3, I guess, is much more likely there. It's also like, I mean, I think Rosa talked about this in one of the interviews or press conferences, that there's going to be matches where they play with the back 3, and I think maybe in like a league game they could do something like that if they had healthy people. But now I think this isn't really the time to break it out. Like, I think now you just kind of go with this, which has been working, and then you can just make smaller adjustments, and, you know, maybe use Delaney there to start, and then, you know, or you put him in to kind of secure a result. But like, I think it's very likely that you're going to have Bellingham out there, and Reina with Royce to start, and Dahoud. I think that those 4 preset, and I think the back line is kind of like, you really don't know. You only have like four healthy defenders, and then Haaland, and then really like the Malen or Tigges, you know, depending on who you need. But yeah, I think there's not really much of not too many other choices, I guess.
Yeah, I really wonder what Nagelsmann's plan will be on how to shut down Mahmoud Dahoud, because I feel like if you don't account for him in particular, he will have an absolute field day against Bayern and cause a lot of Restverteidigung for Bayern, which in the past hasn't been too well, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, probably like what they would want to do is have, the wingers kind of press inside, and, you'd rather concede possession to Paslak and Schultz kind of any day of the week. And then you can kind of overshift with Davies, who, like Davies certainly has the closeout speed that I think nobody really else has. So in certain situations, you can use him to press like the fullback, and then just have a Müller or Goretzka press up on Dahoud, and maybe like have the other winger press the center back, and then have Lewandowski press Kanji or the right center back. So I think there's different ways. I think the key is much more about how they will do their rest defense, as you said. Like, will they stay with like a +1 and basically play 2 against 1 against Haaland, or will they kind of try to go 1-on-1 with Upamecano, which I think, like, in theory, that's, I don't know, even in theory, it's probably not a good idea. But like having seen him struggle against Thuram, I mean, yeah, like, but I think like out of any defender in world football, to the extent that you can leave him 1v1, I mean, there's Upamecano would seem to be there in the top sort of 5, like other than like a healthy Van Dijk or Varane or, some of these guys. But I think now you kind of, and maybe you'll do it for certain periods of the game, but I think no, in the beginning they'll probably just start with, with him and with Upamecano and Zule against Haaland, and just kind of, you'd much rather kind of feed off of the other striker, or, maybe use Stanisic in a more like, inside role and things like that, and then go from there. But in general, I think Nagelsmann, doesn't press as higher, and his pressing scheme is much more conservative and space oriented than Flick's. Like, Flick's was very like, balls to the wall, kind of. I mean, they played the highest line of anybody, obviously, and Nagelsmann really wasn't doing that at Leipzig. Like, it's much more situational and much more based on things, and it's much more space oriented than it's like, than what Flick, who just almost seemed like careless at times, and he said like the reward of getting the ball high is better and it's greater than the risk of giving up a goal. And I think Nagelsmann isn't thinking that way. He's much more of the, let's try to build out of the back, and let's maybe even have defensive possession and not generate so much with the pressing, or not in every game, or maybe he'll do it for bigger games. But like, I'm not sure if he's gonna like, I actually would bet against that he's gonna like come up with some crazy pressing scheme against Dortmund.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, this is sort of still a very blank canvas, especially the Super Cup is where a lot of things can be tried out. I think the term glorified friendly sort of dubs it quite well. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the game, because there's zero pressure really. Of course, until you hear the first whistle and then you desperately want to win this match. But other than that, I'm not going to be in a nervous sweat like in the Champions League semi-final, for example. Is all I'm saying. Anyway, Abel, I think this is a good time to knock it on the head. We've already sort of dabbled into scoreline predictions, but now you're hard pressed. Your one chance to get it right. What's it going to be?
I'm going to go with like the 5-4 win for Dortmund. I'll go with something stupid like that.
All right. Yeah, I'm having a 4-2 win for Dortmund, actually.
All right.
So we'll see how this pans out in the end. But yeah, for now, I'm looking forward to it, and obviously looking forward to discussing the match afterward and see how Dahoud fared against Nagelsmann's traps. Anywho, you can follow Abel at BundesPL on Twitter. Is there anything you want to plug, Abel?
No, not really. I guess like basically just in terms of the newsletter that I will maybe occasionally do. I'm kind of got a lot of different things in terms of my work. I will be doing some Champions League this season, maybe hopefully from Dortmund at some point, and I can get back there. Although I don't think anybody's really comfortable making too many travel plans. But yeah, that maybe. I mean, obviously, I think Bundesliga coverage is something I'm looking to do more of, since the network that I'm on doesn't show the Bundesliga anymore. So yeah, you could plugging myself, I guess. And if you're really interested in hiring me, and if you're, these kind of things, obviously, you're more than welcome to reach out either on Twitter or some of the other various places, I guess. But no work in terms of any note that I would want to plug, but mostly I'm just here to advertise myself. I think somebody said that the best candidate for the job is me.
All right. You can follow me on Twitter at Stefan Butzko. You can follow all of us at Yellowwallpod on Twitter and Facebook. If you want to subscribe to this show, please do so via iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, etc. Obviously, you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is findable if you just type in Yellowwallpod in one word in YouTube, and you'll find our channel and can subscribe to it and listen to the show there if you're so inclined. If you want to support financially, you can always go to our Patreon, which is on patreon.com/theyellowwall. And that should be it for now. We will be back recording another episode on Thursday to discuss how the Supercup went, and obviously how Dortmund will fare against Freiburg. But until then, as always, thank you for listening and goodbye.